Dangle jaw Timmy Bushinski. That October night, a mystical sky of rolling clouds, Timmy Bushinski arrived 6 minutes late to the Colden River swimming hole. Gwyn and Jay Babbage, the twins, along with their tag-along, Teddy Fraser, promised they'd meet Timmy at 7:30 p.m. to hang out and ride bikes. Finally, it seemed like Timmy had met some friends, but his mother had made him late that night. Mom had been lecturing him on the known variations of disrespectful tones, and whether lip-smacking was a tone at all or just a rhythm. Alone now, with the night, the foaming waters of the Colden River rolling forcefully on his right, and to his left, the waters rolling on down into the lower pool, which stirred up spiraling lines of white atop the swimming hole's surface. Though Timmy and his family had swam the hole back in July, shortly after they'd moved to Colden, the thought of its churning depths, there alone with him, brought a chilling tingle to his chest. His heart froze over, and his mind told him he was alone. "Help," he said quietly, stiff-lipped to himself, as if to test the strength of the rushing water's roar to mute his weakly uttered plea. He could have yelled it. The river's drone would have swallowed his most stentorian call. He waited another 7 minutes before mounting his red Mongoose Legion BMX bike to begin the hard climb back up Sud Hill Road. Then over the hump at last, the easy ride down earned. It felt like flying. Wind through his ears, washing out thought, cleansing him of clinging social troubles. Downhill he went, his heart a hot liquid drum. He sped along the road's length, dimly lit. The road's ends seemed to meet and dissolve in the burning blue of the wedge of night sky between hills. A pair of slender, velvety does, fleeing him, arced silently away from the road into the dense woods whizzing by his watering eyes. Gwyn and Jay Babbage had fastened the 200-foot length of aircraft cable, 5/32 gauge, between two teenage oak trees on opposite sides of Lower Sud Hill Road. An eye hook in one tree, and cable through a pulley screwed into the bark of the other, and a strong pull, a quick wrap around the tree, and the cable went up with a pluck to the height of Timmy's BMX Mongoose handlebars. The cable would clothesline the bike's handles like a lasso to the antlers of a prime buck. The Babbage boys had posted Teddy Fraser farther down the hill, armed and ready with the weapon of mass distraction, a flare gun. When Ted saw Timmy on his bike, Ted was to fire the flare to signal the coming. So fast would it all happen that he wouldn't even glimpse the silver hair of moonlight reflecting off the bundle of wound steel wire the cable comprised. Bushinski's handlebars would catch the wire, over he'd go, his bike slingshotted in the opposite direction, and Gwyn Babbage would get the whole prank on video. That was the plan. Teddy spotted Timmy on his BMX. The flare shot off and left a tail of red, end-of-the-world flame behind its hissing ascent. Gwyn got a good close-up of the awe on Timmy's face, glowed electric red by the rising flare. Jay pulled tight, ran once around the tree. The pulley squeaked unto maximum tension. Gwyn's chest buzzed with the electricity of laughter suppressed. This was going to be good. The aircraft cable, stretched 3 feet above Sud Hill Road, missed Timmy's handlebars. Held taut as a low-register piano string, the thin steel-woven rope caught the speeding Timmy right across his wide-open shock mouth. The flare gave Timmy good reason to let the back of his throat see that incandescent snake in the sky, kind of sidewinding against the backdrop of leftover sunlight. The cable didn't just slice open Timmy's mouth corners, no. The cable took Timmy's jaw nearly clean off. He fell back off his BMX, and the mongoose rolled on. He landed hard, his jaw hanging loosely from a couple of thick, wet tendons extending from somewhere on the right side of his face. The dangling jaw spun round on the ends of bloodied cords extending from the root of his ear. Then he stood up. Shock had taken him. Teddy and the Babbage boys stared on in disbelief at the sight of Timmy's scrambling to his feet, his lower jaw spinning juicily, suspended from the side of his face. Timmy's shrill, unarticulated screams came from someplace reedy in the depths of his throat. His tongue, suddenly without its floor, twirled and darted like a blind snake searching for an escape hole that wasn't there. The wet squawks from his exposed larynx seemed to be attempting an utterance of "Help! Help!" but a mournful, droning wretch performed in a vomitous baritone was all that he could possibly sound. Gwyn was first to go to him. Yes, maybe calm him down a bit, push his jawbone back into the joints by the ears, and voila, the hospital could stitch up the rest and send him home. As the others gathered around the maimed and frantic Timmy, they saw that he was losing blood quickly from his mouth. Ted thought about syrup squirting out of a spigot in a maple tree. Upon closer look, there was no amount of reconstructive surgery that could put Timmy's face back together again. The boys knew they'd be in trouble deeper than the source of Timmy's screaming. With all that blood pouring out of him, he was going to die anyway. They might as well just help him get there faster. Put the poor suffering half-mouthed bastard out of his wailing misery. After all, if he did end up living, he would forever be a horror to look upon. Unable to swallow, a constant fountain of drool from his leftover face. At least that was Gwyn's thinking on the matter, and as usual, his thinking soon became the thinking of Jay and Teddy. The boys told Timmy they'd take him to the police station to get some help. He went willingly at first, but the Babbage boys, some sick, ancient cruelty arising inside them, started to find Timmy's condition rather funny. They laughed at his dry, flaccid tongue hanging over the top of his voice box. He seemed like a panting dog exhausted from a master's beating. And it didn't take Timmy very long to realize that the boys he'd thought his new friends had no intention of helping him get the medical attention he required. So it was then or never. Timmy made a break for the woods at Nob Hill Road, where thick shade could be found on the brightest of blazing summer days. Teddy and the Babbage boys pursued, yelling, swearing horrible threats at him. As Timmy ran, the pounding of his heart synchronized with the steadily jetting blood from his upper gums, where there remained only a few shards of shattered molar among dangling nerve endings. He couldn't outrun them for long. Up ahead, across an intersecting dirt road, through a meadow, a building, a stumpy, scum-windowed factory with white-painted steel letters above the bay door that read, "Nut Beetle Thwackers and Makers of Fine Rugs." Into the derelict old factory he ran, trail of his jaw blood behind him. He didn't expect to find anyone to help him there, but his blood-drained brain convinced him he could find someplace inside to hide and lick his wounds for a while. Then something hard and fast whipped Timmy in his midsection. The wind knocked out of him at both ends. Down he went again. The boys were whacking him with what looked like antique squash rackets with the mesh torn out. The rug thwacker, of braided steel and iron, a leather-bound handle on an upside-down teardrop in shape, a predecessor to the vacuum cleaner, and a weapon somewhere between bullwhip and baseball bat. It struck him again and again from every direction. The thwackers opened his skin, mashed his tendons, and rattled his brains to marmalade. Moments after Timmy had gone still, Gwyn had continued his brutal, ceaseless thwacking of the body. The three boys caught their breath together as they looked at the lifeless remaining mass of Timmy Bushinski. His severed hang-by-a-thread jaw now teetered unsteadily beside his head. No more than a blood-pulped stump. Gwyn ordered the others to roll Timmy's body up in the brown industrial carpet they'd killed him on. The rug was largely rectangular enough to hold most of the spilled blood in the center of the Timmy roll-up. The aged carpet fibers resisted splendidly the roll's leaking innards. Back up the hill to the scene of the prank gone wrong, the boys joked as they carried under their arms the rug-rolled remains of their victim. Ted quipped how Timmy looked like a giant version of the raspberry cannoli his grandma Spatafora used to make. And Jay said that Timmy looked good enough to smoke. Gwyn ordered them to wrap the carpet roll-up in the aircraft cable and tie the cable's end to Timmy's Mongoose BMX. They'd dump him and his bike into what locals called Colden's Jurassic Hole. The hole was supposedly bottomless, a small, unassuming pond on the property of the resident paleontologist, whom everybody knew as Mr. Bones, the fossil man. Having snuck to the Jurassic Hole, the 11-year-old murderers tiredly pushed with their feet the rug-rolled and cable-tied remains of the unfortunate Bushinski. Into Mr. Bones's bottomless pond the body went, the BMX plowing the pond's bank until it followed after the sunken roll. A gentle plunge and plop, and then a gurgle and swoosh of little waves, and Dangle Jaw Timmy Bushinski was gone. The state canine unit easily nosed out the trail of the victim right to the edge of his bottomless watery grave on Mr. Bones's property. Authorities pumped out and dragged the little pond, and they did find a bottom there. It was a ground of rapid immersion mud, a kind of northern hemisphere quicksand. No matter how deep they plunged hooks, claws, barbed rods, nets, sensors and cameras and submarine drones into the mud of Mr. Bones's drained pond, there never surfaced a rug-rolled Timmy. The Babbage boys and Ted Fraser got away with it all on account of no body ever being found. But come the day of Timmy's death, 1 year later on the evening of October 24th, the Babbage boys and their parents died at the Springville Fair. The tilt-a-whirl cab containing the Babbages ejected spontaneously from a malfunctioning flailing arm of the classic carnival ride. The silvery mother-of-pearl four-seater pod came to a landing at the bottom of the neighboring Colden Community Center swimming pool. Deep enough to swallow the tilt-a-whirl cab, the pool took the lives of Gwyn and Jay Babbage and their parents, all of whom had struggled to free themselves from the ride's safety restraints. Long after the tilt-a-whirl pod had been craned up out of the pool, the bodies remained stuck in the seats. The firefighters found it strange how the seat harness mechanism remained resistant to their most advanced attempts at unlocking it. For the year up to the next 24th of October, Teddy Fraser lived in mortal terror. On the night of the 2-year death anniversary of Dangle Jaw Timmy Bushinski, Teddy thought he'd best stay safely at home, and the morning after, on the 25th, he'd know he'd gotten away with it. The ghost of Timmy Bushinski overlooked him last year, perhaps forgiven him for just going along with what Gwyn Babbage forced him to do. If a ghost was once a person, and a person can forgive, what reason for a ghost to hold a grudge? Nevertheless, tow-headed Teddy Fraser, the Phrase as he always wanted to be called, drowned in the downstairs toilet bowl, the one in the hall bathroom that his dad always barked about being for Dad's use alone. Dad was 2 floors up, on bed sheets wet with Evan Williams bourbon, and Dad's brain had gone down to low delta. In that state, couldn't have heard what happened to his son. So, alone for the night, Teddy had for some reason ingested enough rhubarb leaf to turn his guts inside out. Ted regurgitated himself to total unconsciousness. Passed out, head dunked into the toilet bowl, seat pinched down at the back of his neck, his lungs bulging full with a mixture of bowl water and his own stomach contents. October 24th came and came again, and with each one came undeniable coincidences of local legend. Many of Colden's townsfolk reported being alone at night, getting that tingling sense that happens somewhere between your spine and the air, and then hearing a whoosh that seems to come from far away at first, but then gets instantly behind you, where you feel that hard, invisible thwack. Just one, of course. Turning to see the source of the thwack, no one is there. Another local legend tells how every time an old rug is left rolled up at the roadside for pickup on large garbage day, residents hear a distant, reedy-throated wailing, a child's voice, upon the rain-speckled wind of the hills. And some souls braver, they sneak onto Mr. Bones's property on the night, get close to the hole, and turning their backs to the bottomless water hole, looking into a mirror, they descry the liquid reflection of Timmy's red mongoose BMX on the still surface. And for those inventive souls who put a mirror inside the frame of an antique rug thwacker, they see the sad, maimed face of Dangle Jaw Timmy looking back at them. But those who do see the face, the dangling bloody jaw, they forever wish they hadn't. Such disturbances are best left to the depths, for once the most disturbing visions come to the surface, never again can they return to the source in obscurity. Those persistent, upsetting images forever reflecting at you from those unreachable places of your mind. Well, if the vision of Dangle Jaw Timmy should ever linger too long unto the point of dread within you, alleviate the oncoming disturbance by meeting it with some humor. Kind of dark humor, but just sing the little song composed by some schoolyard children from somewhere, their names washed out in time. It goes,
Timmy, Timmy, Dangle Jaw, riding on his bike. Timmy gonna thwack you in the dark tonight. roll you in the carpet, push you down a hole, whack you in the jaw and then take away your soul. Timmy, Timmy, Dangle job, flying down a hill, catch you in a clothesline, kill, kill, kill.